there are tens of thousands of buildings that can't get the proper certification in order for people to move on with their lives. I'd spoken maybe a couple of weeks ago now to Giles Grover, co-lead of something called End Our Cladding Scandal campaign. And I asked him if he would come back when the report came on. And Giles, thanks very much for accepting my invitation.
Sure, no problem.
From a cladding point of view, how did you receive yesterday's report?
It's a start. Hopefully it's the end of this scandal, the crisis that we're facing. I think the first point we have to make is, we stand shoulder to shoulder with Grenfell United. They've supported us since day one. And what we really need to see was truth, justice, accountability. There were some concerns now about the delays. I mean, obviously justice delayed is justice denied. There were concerns that the charges that may be brought, will be brought in 2026, 2027, have those potential, the people it may be brought against, have they not had enough time to get ideas how to get out of justice being sought. So if we sort of turn to our issues, should we say? So Keir Starmer did. I mean, I've not had a chance to catch up with everything yesterday. Obviously, report of 1,700 words, a lot of statements, a lot of debates. So Keir Starmer's now starting to say the right things. We've been waiting a couple of months. Obviously, we've not really heard anything from Angela Rayner really until the fire in Dagenham last week. So we are talking about 4,630 buildings that are being monitored by the government, but that's literally only painting half the picture. We're not talking about non-cladding defects because not all schemes cover those. We're not talking about buildings under 11 metres. There's still thousands of buildings waiting to be assessed. So those numbers, and again, let's focus and pull it back to talk about people. Right now, you're looking at about 300,000 residents. Those numbers are going to double quite easily. So we need this government now to get a grip of this crisis. We still don't quite know exactly what they're going to do and when, but we also need more than warm words as well, because we've had enough of promises that end up being broken, nice sounding statements, prime ministers, housing secretaries saying we'll do this or we'll do that, and be on the side of leaseholders and residents. We just need to see action. We just need homes to be made safer.
But those platitudes, we've heard them, we've been hearing them since the 90s, and you come through Lacanau. But yours is not about death and disaster in the same way. In a number of people that I've spoken to who literally can't sell their property, who literally are struggling to insure it, and many of the improvements necessary, the costs are being passed on. Is there a typical story that exemplifies the types of challenges that people you represent and the challenges you had personally, so that my listener can better understand?
Yeah, I think the part of the issue is it is so complicated because you've got leasehold law, you've got different issues and defects, some that are covered, some aren't. You've got that many agencies involved. I mean, I can give you an example of a building that has had in Essex, it's had remediation work funded by the government. Unfortunately, not all the issues were covered. So it means that they're still unsafe despite millions of pounds of taxpayer funding being spent. And you're right about the point that, okay, it's not the same specific issues at Grenfell, but it then is, because we've been warning the government, Grenfell 2's in the post. Look at what happened in Dagenham. It was just, I think I said last week, there's a lot of luck involved that people actually managed to escape without loss of life. And yes, it is about not being able to sell your property, but that's where it starts to get even worse, because the mortgage lenders said they consider lending since 9th of January 2023. Based on very simple information, but they're not doing that. Buildings insurance is still an absolute mess. There's people paying many, many multiples. So, but what we need to focus on again is going back to say, right, let's make sure all the buildings that are unsafe. Let's make sure that all those leaseholds and residents are protected, because the approach has essentially meant that there's too many different potential places where liability could be, and everyone, freeholders, housing associations, developers, managing agents, contractors, everyone's arguing the toss alongside the lawyers, alongside insurers, and that is what's adding to the delays, alongside all the issues with capacity constraints as well. So I can talk to you about a subset of buildings, but it's just the all buildings, all heights, all defects. That's what Labour said when they were in opposition. They'd moved to fix and to end this scandal. We still need to see that happen.
Yeah, they also talked about the winter fuel allowance, didn't they? And you saw what happened. And I think that, quite often in opposition, it's easy to talk about stuff. And when you have a real look at the scale of it, because even as a layperson, I'm looking at it and you think, what, £22 billion black hole, right? Okay. So if we looked at the buildings, the compensation, and we're trying to build 1.5 million new homes within this parliament, and we're trying to make sure that the people responsible in terms of construction and design no longer get government projects. And I know, if we're sensible, that not all of that can happen.
And I understand that. And again, this is one of the concerns that we've had. And again, maybe I said it last week, that we've seen all the senior politicians, everyone in their hard hats, the high-vis jackets, engaging with the people that say have caused this crisis. But if we just, again, we can talk about the billions of pounds, and there's already potentially already about 11 billion funding out there. There's potentially 5 to 10 from social housing providers, but we've got billions there. We can get more from industry. And yes, I appreciate that the problem now is that we want people to build new homes. So we've had these arguments.
You take that money. I've heard this argument. Let me just jump in here, Joe. You take that money. Let me give you the argument against it, right? It's not what I believe. That's not what we're doing here. You will stymie growth. You will stymie investment. You will actually have what they call the law of unintended consequences, where it ends up worse than it is, because you need people to build. You need people to invest. You need people to be able to afford to buy.
Yeah, I mean, broadly, I don't disagree with that. And that's why we're trying to go to Labour to say, you simplify this approach. Because right now, there's 3 or 4, 5, 6, 7 funding schemes where everyone's dealing with it in piecemeal silos. What we think should happen, and what we've said to the government before, simple front end that's managed by an arm's length body such as Homes England. The developer buildings go there, social housing buildings go there. So that means that rather than spending a lot of capital, a lot of money on lawyers and everyone having these arguments, social housing providers saying they have to follow a 14-step program. Let's take all those actors out of it. Let them focus on building homes. Let's get some independence, the assessments. And so all these mechanisms are in place. The funding's there. And that's where we're saying, if you extend the scope, because the developers are complaining, and they were always the low-hanging fruit, the developers saying, you're going after us too much. Okay, let's go after contractors. Let's go after product manufacturers. Let's go after warranty providers and make them all pay, because everyone, the government, industry agrees that the leaseholders, residents, innocent victims, you just tell them, crack on building new homes, you'll still have to pay for it. But we can just extend the levy so it's over 10 years, 20 years, 30 years to repay the fund. So it's actually very simple. I'll hear all sorts of pushback from interested parties, but I can tell you right now, it's very simple indeed.
Well, let me know. Let's stay in contact, fella, because I like what you're saying. I hope they listen to you. I get the feeling that, government isn't going to be able to manipulate and work with all these things at the same time. Something's got to give, and we'll watch and see which it is. Giles, thanks very much for talking today. Co-lead of the End Our Cladding Scandal campaign.